Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a night hundreds of years ago. There are no buzzing phones, no glowing screens, no ticking clocks on your wall. Just the dim flicker of a candle, the crackle of a hearth, the deep quiet of a medieval village where silence is not empty, but alive. For us today, sleep means 7 to 8 hours in one stretch, a single long dive into dreams. But for most of human history, that idea was unthinkable. People slept in two halves, with a wide valley of wakefulness in between, a time filled with prayers, chores, mischief, even whispered secrets in the dark. This was called segmented sleep, and it was not strange. It was normal. Imagine peasants collapsing into straw beds after sunset, only to rise again around midnight, lighting a small fire, tending to animals, checking on children, or simply sitting in stillness before the next round of slumber. The night was not a single block of rest, but a layered landscape of activity and pause, a rhythm shaped by candles, seasons, and the turning of the earth itself. In monasteries, bells rang to wake monks for midnight prayers, their first sleep already done, their second sleep waiting after devotion. In towns, couples whispered to each other in the hush between rests, intimacy wrapped in the quiet hours when the world felt softer, safe. Some wrote letters by candlelight, some read, some plotted dreams, or confessed sins, all in the strange liminal time when day and night seemed to overlap. Think about it. What we call insomnia today was once a doorway into an entirely different rhythm of life, a natural pause the body expected. And the evidence is everywhere, in diaries, in medical texts, in court records, in the casual way people once spoke about their first sleep and their second sleep, as if it were as natural as breathing. Tonight, as you listen to this story, you'll walk into that forgotten world, a world where sleep was not a solid wall of unconsciousness, but a series of doorways, where waking at 2 a.m. was not a curse, but an invitation to pray, to love, to dream, to simply exist in the stillness of the night. And perhaps by the end, you will wonder, have we truly evolved beyond them, or have we simply forgotten the rhythm that once guided every single night of our ancestors? The medieval world of night. To understand why people slept the way they did, we first need to step into their nights, and those nights were nothing like ours. Imagine a medieval town just after sunset. The sky goes dark, and without electric light, the world changes completely. Candles are expensive, oil lamps are precious, and firewood is always in short supply. For most families, when the sun sets, the day is truly over. Darkness fills homes like water pouring into a well. Inside, the air is smoky from the hearth. Shadows crawl on rough wooden walls, and every creak of timber feels louder in the silence. People lie down early, not because they are tired, but because there is little else to do. But here's the twist. They do not expect to sleep through the night. Instead, they fall into what they called their first sleep, drifting off for 4 or 5 hours. Then, like clockwork, they stir, they rise, not startled, not anxious, but naturally, as if the body itself understands that night is made of two halves, not one. In that quiet interval, entire worlds open up. Monks in monasteries shuffle into chapels for midnight prayers, their chants echoing like whispers into the stone. Farmers check on livestock, making sure no fox or wolf has come near. Women stir the embers to keep the fire alive. Some people sit in silence, reflecting, while others take up tasks too delicate for daylight, weaving, mending, writing letters by flickering flame. And yes, this was also a time for intimacy, for couples to share closeness before drifting back into their second sleep. When dawn neared, they would wake again feeling not groggy but refreshed, because this pattern was natural to them, written into the rhythm of days and nights, shaped by sun and darkness. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear it, the crackle of wood, the soft shuffle of feet, the breath of sleepers turning in straw beds, and in between a hush so deep that the night itself feels alive. This was the medieval world of night, a place where time stretched, and where sleep was not a block of silence, but a tapestry of waking and resting, the first sleep, life before midnight. When darkness settled and candles burned low, families across the medieval world sank into their first sleep. This was not the restless tossing of modern nights, but a deep plunge into unconsciousness, shaped by exhaustion from hard labor and the quiet absence of distraction. Imagine peasants who worked from dawn to dusk in fields, bending under the sun, now lying together on straw mattresses, stuffed with hay, their bodies heavy, their breath falling into rhythm. The first sleep lasted for hours, a thick, dream-rich rest that carried people away almost immediately after sunset. Children curled against parents, farmhands and apprentices stretched out on benches, even noblemen and kings, under heavy furs, all surrendering to the same silence. And yet in this first sleep, the world was far from idle. Outside animals stirred, wolves prowled and the forests whispered. Inside, the human mind wandered into vivid dreams, and those dreams were often taken as omens, lessons, or warning. Physicians of the time described the first sleep as the body's labor, the stage where digestion, healing, and strength building occurred. It was common for people to rise around midnight, not surprised, not alarmed, but refreshed enough to light a candle or stir the coals. For them, waking in the middle of the night was not insomnia. It was part of the design of life itself. Court records, diaries, and sermons reveal how natural this rhythm was. People spoke casually of their first sleep, just as we today talk of an evening nap or a morning alarm. Imagine sitting in a medieval room, the fire reduced glowing embers, shadows stretching long across the beams, and hearing the steady breathing of those in their first sleep. It is a world so different from ours that even our bodies might find it strange, and yet for them, it was the most natural rhythm in the world. The midnight watch, life between sleep. People everywhere, peasants in cottages, monks in stone monasteries, nobles in castles, stirred from their first sleep. They rose not with groans or grogginess, but as if this waking was expected, almost scripted into their bodies. In this mysterious window, the watch of the night began. Imagine it, a farmer lighting a small taper, checking on animals in the byre, ensuring no wolves or thieves disturb them. A mother stoking the embers of the fire so her children would not shiver. A monk stepping barefoot across cold stone to join his brothers in candlelit chants, their voices weaving through the silent cloister, echoing into the stars. In towns, couples whispered to each other, trading secrets too soft for daylight. Lovers sought closeness in this liminal space, when the world outside was asleep, and time seemed to stand still. Some prayed, believing these hours were more sacred, a time when heaven was especially near. Others wrote letters, read devotional texts, or sat in contemplation. And sometimes, this watch was practical. Artisans carved, healers prepared herbs, guards kept vigil at city walls. Court records even show confessions, contracts, and crimes committed in this strange interval, as if society itself recognized it as its own small world within the larger one. Imagine yourself there. The fire glows dimly, your neighbors' cottages are quiet, the sky is vast and endless above, and yet you are awake, part of a secret rhythm older than modern sleep. After 1 or 2 hours, people would return to bed, slipping into their second sleep, until dawn. But in that brief watch, life unfolded in miniature, quieter, softer, more intimate than anything daylight allowed. It was the heartbeat of the night, the hidden chapter of every medieval day. The second sleep, dreams and dawn. As the watch of the night drew to its close, people quietly returned to their beds, settling into what they called the second sleep. This was not a shallow nap, but a deep restorative slumber that carried them to dawn. Imagine lying on straw, your body warm beneath wool or fur, the embers of the fire glowing faintly as the air grew colder. Outside, the village is silent again, save for the occasional bark of a dog or the cry of an owl. Within this second sleep, Dreams blossom. Medieval people believed dreams held meaning, messages from God, glimpses of the future, warnings of danger. Physicians wrote that the second sleep was when the mind processed thoughts, weaving them into visions that could guide or trouble a soul. In monasteries, monks who had prayed in the midnight hours drifted back into rest, certain their sleep was now blessed. Farmers, having checked on animals, returned to warmth, knowing the day's chores would soon begin. Couples who shared intimacy in the watch now slept in closeness, comforted by the rhythm of another's breath. And so the night passed, divided yet whole. The first sleep for the body, the watch for the spirit, the second sleep for the mind. At last the cock crowed, the horizon turned pale, and the second sleep lifted naturally, with the coming of dawn. No alarms, no sudden jolts, only the soft rising of a village into morning. This rhythm, so foreign to us today, was the natural heartbeat of nights for centuries. Imagine waking with the sun after such a night, not restless, not deprived, but refreshed, carrying the strange quiet wisdom of a world that lived in two halves of sleep, and in between them, a moment of magic that modern life has all but forgotten. Why segmented sleep made sense, full detail expansion. To modern ears, the idea of waking up at midnight sounds like insomnia, a disorder, something wrong with the body. But in the medieval world, this rhythm of first sleep, watch and second sleep, was not strange at all. It made perfect sense, because life then was ruled not by clocks, but by nature. Nights in winter stretched to 12 or even 14 hours, far too long for the human body to stay in one continuous block of sleep. Dividing the night allowed people to adapt to darkness, without wasting time or precious resources. Firewood, candles and oil were expensive. No one stayed up late, unless they had to. Instead, the early hours were for heavy rest, the middle watch for quiet activity, and the second half of the night for restorative dreaming. Before dawn, physicians of the time even wrote about this rhythm. They explained that the first sleep was when the body worked hardest, digesting food, repairing muscles, building strength. The waking watch gave the stomach time to settle and the mind time to clear. Then came the second sleep, a lighter, dream-filled rest, in which the brain processed thoughts and visions. People even spoke of it casually, in diaries, legal documents. So, they would say, after my first sleep I prayed, or during the second sleep I dreamt of, as naturally as we talk about going to bed at 10 and waking at 6. For monks, segmented sleep aligned perfectly with spiritual discipline. Midnight prayers were considered purer, more pleasing to God, because the world was still and the body freshly rested. For farmers, it was practical. Checking livestock in the night reduced danger from wolves or thieves. For couples, it was intimate. The watch between sleeps gave them privacy and closeness in the hush of darkness. And for society, it simply worked, a rhythm that matched the environment. Without electric light, human life followed the sun. With long nights, the body found its own balance. Imagine it. Your first sleep restores your strength. Your watch lets you tend to small matters, or whisper with loved ones. Your second sleep fills you with dreams. At dawn you wake refreshed, not tired, because this was the cycle your ancestors followed for thousands of years. Today we struggle to force our bodies into 8 unbroken hours, but back then, segmented sleep was the natural answer to a world of darkness, scarcity, and silence. Evidence of first and second sleep in history. It may sound unbelievable to us today, but the proof of segmented sleep is written all across history, in books, diaries, medical texts, and even in legal records. When historians began digging into archives, they noticed something strange: countless references to first sleep and second sleep. These were not poetic phrases, not metaphors, but casual descriptions of everyday life. In the 15th century, an English ballad mentions lovers meeting after the first sleep. In a French medical book from the 16th century, a doctor advises patients to rise briefly between sleeps, to let food digest before returning to bed. In court records, criminals confessed to breaking into houses after the first sleep, knowing people would be awake and distracted. Even great writers echoed this pattern. Chaucer's tales, Cervantes' novels, diaries from Italian merchants, all spoke of the night in two halves. For them it was so normal they did not explain it. Only we, centuries later, find it strange. Imagine leafing through a monk's journal and reading, "I awoke from first sleep, prayed until the bell, then returned to my bed. No further comment," because no further comment was needed. Modern historians pieced these fragments together and realized this was not an oddity of one culture or one region. Evidence stretched from Europe to Asia, to the Middle East. Everywhere, people spoke of nights divided. Archaeologists studying rural homes noticed fire pits, built for easy relighting, suggesting people expected to wake and tend embers. Anthropologists comparing oral traditions found that even in Africa and South America, some tribes kept segmented rhythms, until very recently. All of it adds up to one truth: our ancestors lived in a different rhythm of night, and the fact that it vanished only in the last few centuries makes it even more fascinating. Segmented sleep was not a myth, it was daily reality, hiding in plain sight in the words they left behind. The disappearance of the first and second sleep. If segmented sleep was once normal, why did it vanish? The answer lies not in our bodies, but in history itself. For centuries, people across the world slipped into first sleep, rose for the watch, then drifted into second sleep, until the 17th and 18th centuries, when the Industrial Revolution began to change the rhythm of nights forever. Cities grew brighter, markets stayed open later, and candles, once precious, became cheaper with mass production. Oil lamps illuminated streets, and suddenly people had reason to stay awake long after sunset. The long darkness that had forced humanity into two sleeps was shrinking. Then came the printing press and cheap books. People began to read late into the night, their imagination stealing hours from sleep. In the 19th century, gas lamps lit entire towns, followed by electricity in the midnight no longer felt like a pause between lives. It became part of the day itself. Factories demanded workers to show up at dawn. Trains ran on schedules. Schools fixed their hours. Sleep had to be standardized, compressed, disciplined into a single block. Doctors too began to call broken sleep a disorder, forgetting that for millennia, it had been the human norm. And so, slowly, the language of first and second sleep faded from memory. Diaries stopped mentioning it. Advice books stopped recommending it. By the 20th century, barely anyone remembered that it had ever existed. Imagine the loss. For thousands of years, people accepted that nights had layers, that waking at 2 a.m. was natural. Then, within just a few generations, we convinced ourselves it was abnormal. Our grandparents were taught to fear what our ancestors embraced, and yet, deep in the body, the old rhythm has not vanished. Some insomniacs today wake at midnight, restless, without knowing they are simply echoing the pattern of their ancestors. The world around them has changed, but the pulse of segmented sleep lingers, a ghost of nights we once lived, erased not by evolution, but by the glow of human invention. What midnight meant, the sacred hours. In the medieval world, midnight was not an accident of the clock. It was a sacred threshold, a liminal doorway between two lives. When people rose from their first sleep, they stepped into a time charged with meaning, a time they called the watch. For monks, this was the holiest hour of all. In stone monasteries across Europe, bells echoed through cold corridors, summoning brothers from straw beds to the chapel. Wrapped in wool, they shuffled barefoot across flagstones, candles flickering in iron sconces. Their voices rose in low, steady chants, echoing through arches and out into the star-filled night. To them, this was the hour when heaven was closest, when prayer carried farther, because the world was hushed. They called it matins, and to pray at midnight was not duty alone, but devotion perfected. For common folk, midnight carried a different weight. Farmers often woke to tend to animals, checking barns for foxes or wolves. But before returning to bed, many whispered prayers, invoking saints, or lighting small candles. They believed this hour was dangerous, a time when spirits walked, when witches stirred, when unseen forces prowled the edges of their cottages. Folklore called it the witching hour, and in those tales, the boundary between living and dead thinned. Families kept their children close, fires alive, and voices soft, lest they attract what lingered in the dark. Yet not all was fear. Midnight was also intimacy's hidden ally. In crowded homes where multiple generations slept side by side, the quiet watch gave couples rare privacy.
Diaries and ballads speak of lovers meeting after first sleep, their closeness hidden beneath the silence of night. Scholars too valued this time. By firelight, refreshed from first rest, their minds sharpened. They copied manuscripts, studied scripture, wrote letters, believing these hours to be charged with a clarity denied by daylight. Physicians even noted that thoughts after midnight seemed clearer, because the body, partly restored, freed the mind for contemplation. Imagine walking through a village at this hour. Most cottages are dark, but here and there, a faint glow seeps through shutters. Inside, a woman hums softly while spinning thread. A man writes carefully by candlelight. A monk chants in a distant abbey, his voice echoing across valleys, and overhead the stars burn brighter than any lamp, as if the universe itself keeps watch. Midnight was never empty to them. It was alive, layered, mysterious. It was the sacred hour, not just a pause between sleeps, but a time where the soul felt closer to the divine, where fear mingled with faith, where love found silence, and where the human heartbeat aligned with something far greater than itself. The role of dreams in second sleep. After the midnight watch ended, people returned to their beds, slipping back into what they called their second sleep, and in this final stretch of the night, dreams reigned supreme. To the medieval mind, dreams were not random flickers of imagination, they were messages, warnings, even divine instructions. Physicians and scholars wrote extensively about the difference between the dreams of first sleep and second sleep. The first sleep, they claimed, was heavy and bodily, filled with visions caused by digestion or fatigue, but the second sleep, lighter, more delicate, was when the soul wandered, when visions could be trusted. Imagine a villager rising at dawn, recalling a dream from second sleep, and believing it was a sign of the harvest to come. A monk might wake with an image of a saint, interpreting it as a divine blessing. A merchant might take his dream as advice about a deal or a journey. Manuals on dream interpretation circulated across Europe and the Middle East, offering guides on how to decode these nocturnal messages. Even kings consulted their visions, sometimes changing decisions of war and peace based on what they saw in the fragile hours before dawn. In homes, families told each other their dreams over breakfast, treating them as part of life, not fantasy. Some saw angels, others demons, still others glimpses of loved ones who had died. Imagine lying in a straw bed, the faint light of dawn creeping in, holding the memory of a dream that feels as real as touch, and believing it came, not from your own mind but from beyond. The second sleep was therefore more than rest. It was a portal, a nightly journey into mysteries that could shape waking life. To medieval people, dreams were not escapes from reality, they were part of reality, gifts offered by God, fate, or the universe itself in the quiet hours before the rooster crowed. Medicine and science, on segmented sleep. To understand why segmented sleep lasted for centuries, we must also listen to what medieval medicine and early science had to say. In those days, the body was explained through the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Physicians believed that balance among these humors determined health, and sleep was one of the ways the body restored that balance. Manuals from the 15th and 16th centuries carefully described how the first sleep cooled and calmed the body, settling food in the stomach, allowing heat and energy to spread. The waking watch was encouraged, because doctors argued that rising briefly gave the stomach time to digest, prevented heaviness, and cleared the mind. Only then, they said, should a person return to their second sleep, which was lighter, calmer, and more spiritual. They believed dreams, in this stage, were trustworthy precisely because the body had already finished its labor. Scientific thinkers too took note. In Arabic medical texts, scholars, like Avicenna, discussed sleep patterns in ways that hinted at segmented rhythm. In Europe, doctors, such as Thomas Cogan and Robert Burton, observed that broken nights were not unhealthy, but natural, especially in winter. Burton, in The Anatomy of Melancholy, 1621, even advised waking between sleeps as a cure for sadness, suggesting that night vigils gave the mind clarity. Religious authorities agreed. Priests often praised those who prayed during the midnight watch, framing it as a sacred alignment of body and soul, and this belief in healthy broken sleep wasn't limited to books. Common people absorbed it in daily advice. Midwives told mothers to nurse children between sleeps, believing the rhythm matched the infant's natural hunger. Farmers planned chores around it, tending livestock in the watch before resettling to bed. Even courts acknowledged legal testimony, sometimes specified crimes happening after first sleep, as if every juror would naturally understand what that meant. Imagine lying in a 16th century bedchamber, a physician visiting to check on your recovery. He would not scold you for rising at midnight. He would encourage. He might say, after your first rest, walk gently, warm yourself by the fire, drink a little water, and then return to bed for second sleep. This will preserve your health. What we today call a disorder, they called wisdom. But the most striking truth is this: modern science has begun to rediscover what they already knew. Experiments by sleep researchers show that when people live without artificial light, their bodies naturally fall into segmented sleep, a first deep rest, then a wakeful watch, then a second lighter slumber. The pattern is not abnormal at all. It is our ancient biology resurfacing when stripped of modern clocks and electricity. For medieval medicine, segmented sleep was not a problem to be solved, but a rhythm to be embraced, a sign that the body and mind were moving with the natural order of night. In their eyes, to wake at midnight was not sickness, but balance. The household at night, families in the watch. When we think of midnight today, we imagine silence, houses locked, families deep in sleep. But in the medieval world, the watch between first and second sleep was alive with quiet activity, often shared by the entire household. Imagine a peasant cottage, one large room, where parents, children, and sometimes even animals shared space. Around midnight, after their first rest, people stirred gently. The fire, now reduced to embers, was coaxed back to life. A mother placed more wood on the hearth, warming the room, and preparing a small broth or egg. A father checked the doors and shutters, stepping outside to ensure the animals were safe. Children might wake briefly, asking for water or climbing closer to the warmth. These moments were not seen as interruptions, but as part of the family rhythm. For many, this was also a time for conversation. Families discussed the next day's work, whispered about neighbors, or told stories in the flickering glow. Oral traditions, folk tales, ghost stories, parables, were often shared in this watch when imagination was strongest. In wealthier homes, the scene was different but similar in spirit. Servants moved quietly through halls, checking candles, covering coals, preparing chambers for the second rest. Nobles sometimes read or prayed, their households adjusting around. In monasteries, the household was the brotherhood, monks rising together, chanting as one, then returning to their communal dormitories for second sleep. And in every home, there was intimacy. Couples used the watch for closeness, for affection hidden in the day's norm. Medical guides of the time even recommended marital relations after first sleep, claiming the body was restored and the mind calmer. This rhythm wove families together, making the watch a time of both necessity and tenderness. Imagine sitting with your family at this hour, the room dim but warm, the air filled with quiet voices, the creak of wood, the soft murmur of stories. The night was not simply endured but shared. The household was not silent, it was alive in stillness, each member part of a rhythm that felt natural and eternal. In this way, the watch was more than a pause in sleep. It was family time, sacred time, ordinary time, all at once. It gave households moments of connection that daylight, filled with labor and noise, often could not. The watch was the hidden life of the medieval home, a chapter of togetherness, written in whispers and firelight, remembered only by those who lived. Night crimes and dangers, shadows of the watch. But not every midnight hour was peaceful. If the watch gave families warmth and togetherness, it also opened doors to danger. For the medieval world, the night was never truly safe. Streets were unlit, shadows endless, and silence could hide both predator and thief. Many crimes took place after first sleep, when villages stirred, doors opened and people moved in darkness. Court records from England, France, and Italy mention robberies timed for this interval. Burglars knew that homes were awake, distracted by chores, fires, or hushed conversations. They struck in the silence, vanishing before dawn. Outside villages, The risks grew darker still. Wolves prowled in forests, sometimes slipping into fields or barns. Farmers venturing out to check animals carried torches and sticks, their hearts pounding in the still night air. Travelers on lonely roads were even more vulnerable. Bandits lurked in ditches, waiting for carts or lone riders. The absence of light made every rustle feel like an omen. Folklore, too, painted the watch as dangerous. Tales of witches gathering at crossroads, of demons whispering into ears, of spirits wandering between worlds. All were said to happen in these hours. Parents warned children never to wander outside between sleeps. Priests reminded congregations that the devil prowled most eagerly at midnight. Even adults feared that leaving a candle unattended could invite not only fire, but something unseen. Yet danger also came from within. Some households quarreled in these hours, tensions rising in the strange quiet. Court testimonies describe disputes, even violence, breaking out between first and second sleep. It was as if the darkness itself loosened rules, revealing shadows in human nature. Imagine walking through a medieval town in that interval. Most houses glow faintly from embers, but alleys are pitch black. You hear footsteps behind you faster than your own. A dog barks, a window creaks, a cry echoes far off. In that moment, the watch is no longer sacred, it is threatening. To some, midnight meant prayer and closeness. To others, it meant fear, crime, and danger hiding in silence. The truth is that the watch was both a time of peace for families within their walls, and a time of dread for those outside them. In this way, midnight mirrored life itself, a balance of comfort and fear, of safety and risk, of light and shadow. It was never just sleep broken into, it was humanity, living with the night in all its mystery and danger.
Love and intimacy in the midnight watch. If danger haunted the midnight watch outside, then tenderness bloomed within. For many couples in the medieval world, the hours between first and second sleep were the most intimate of all. In crowded homes where days were filled with labor and nights with shared beds of children, relatives, and servants, privacy was rare. But the watch carved out a hidden sanctuary. Imagine a family home, the fire glowing low, children drifting back into slumber, neighbors silent in their own cottages. In that hush, couples turned toward one another. Physicians of the age even advised it. Marriage manuals recommended intimacy after first sleep, when the body had rested and digestion settled, making the mind calmer and the body more responsive. Love in this sense was not rushed or stolen, but harmonized with the rhythm of night. Literary works and folk songs of the time hint at this secret life. Ballads speak of lovers meeting after the first sleep, their words wrapped in the privacy of darkness. Court testimonies even mention trysts confessed to occur between sleeps, when watchful eyes were closed and households quiet. In wealthier estates, tapestries and curtains gave noble couples more space, but the timing was the same. Intimacy after the first rest, before the second. To them it was practical and natural. To us it sounds almost poetic. But intimacy was not always physical. In those hours, couples also spoke. They whispered about worries, shared plans for planting or travel, confessed secrets, or simply enjoyed the quiet companionship denied by busy daylight. The watch gave them space to be more than laborers or caretakers. It let them be simply husband and wife, partners bound by whispers and touch. Imagine lying in a medieval bed. The straw rustles beneath you, a fur blanket holds in warmth, the embers glow red. Around you, silence stretches wide, yet beside you, another heartbeat matches your own. In that moment, the midnight watch is not eerie or fearful, it is intimate, comforting, profoundly human. This rhythm of affection was woven into the fabric of life itself. It is no wonder that many sermons of the time warned against temptation in the night, for the Church knew well that these hours belonged to couples more than to saints. But even within monasteries, monks wrote poems and confessions about how the silence between sleeps stirred emotions both spiritual and earthly. Midnight then was not simply a pause in rest. It was a time of connection, of bodies, of souls, of love carried quietly in the space the world forgot. And in those whispers, the medieval night revealed its softest face, the religious dimension, midnight as a bridge to God. For the medieval soul, the watch between first and second sleep was not only for work or whispers, it was for prayer, for contact with the divine. The Church taught that the hours after midnight were sacred, a holy time when the veil between earth and heaven thinned. Monasteries across Europe lived by this belief. When the bells rang through cloisters in the cold dark, monks rose without complaint, crossing freezing stone floors to gather in chapels lit by trembling candles. Their chants rose in unison, deep and resonant, echoing into arches and outward into the starry silence. These were the matins, the night offices, prayers offered at the hour when most of the world slept. To monks, this discipline was more than duty, it was devotion, proof that even in the loneliest hours God was watching. For ordinary people too, midnight was charged with holiness. Farmers woke and whispered prayers for safety, asking for their families, their animals, their harvests. Women prayed for healthy children, men prayed for protection against storms or sickness. Some even believed angels passed by houses in those hours, listening for prayers and carrying them upward. Priests encouraged midnight devotion, teaching that words spoken between sleeps carried a special weight. And so, across villages, you might see the faint glow of candles in cottages, hear murmured prayers mixing with the crackle of hearths. But religion also gave warning. Midnight, priests said, was the hour when demons prowled, when temptation was strongest. Sermons told congregations to use the watch for prayer, not idleness, for Satan whispered most fiercely in darkness. Folklore and faith blended. People believed that to neglect prayer in these hours risked spiritual harm. And so, while some couples turned to intimacy, others knelt, crossing themselves, whispering scriptures or psalms. Imagine the medieval landscape at this hour, abbey bells tolling through valleys, answered by chants echoing like waves. In cottages, families kneel by their beds, mothers teaching children to whisper, "Our Father," before slipping back into second sleep. And above it all, stars blaze brighter than any torch, as if heaven itself kept vigil. Midnight was not emptiness to them, it was encounter, a time when ordinary humans felt nearest to the eternal. To pray in those hours was to join a rhythm older than clocks, a rhythm of night that bound body, soul, and God together. This is why midnight became a bridge, not just a pause between sleeps, but a crossing between the earthly and the divine. For the medieval world, to wake at midnight was not disturbance, it was invitation. The social life of the night, neighbors and villages in the watch. When we picture the medieval night, we often imagine silence, each household locked in its own small world. But in truth, the watch between first and second sleep had a social heartbeat. Villages breathed together in darkness. Fires glowed faintly through shutters. Voices carried softly across lanes, and sometimes entire communities shared this strange interval of waking. Imagine stepping outside your cottage at midnight. You see smoke rising from a neighbor's chimney, hear the low murmur of a family telling stories, or the soft cry of a baby being nursed in the quiet. It was a time of privacy, yes, but also of shared rhythm, every house rising and resting as one. In towns, this communal presence was even more visible. Night watchmen patrolled the streets, carrying lanterns and staves, calling out the hours to reassure citizens. Their voices, "Past midnight all is well," echoed down alleys, reminding people that they were not alone. Markets, though closed, sometimes stirred with bakers already preparing bread for dawn, their ovens glowing while the rest of the town shifted between sleep and wakefulness.
Inns and taverns too occasionally came alive, serving travelers who arrived in the still hours, warming them with ale before they too sought second rest. And then there were festivals. On feast days or midsummer nights, villages sometimes turned the midnight watch into celebration, lighting bonfires, dancing, drumming, and singing until dawn. In those moments, the boundary between sleep and waking dissolved entirely, the whole community embracing the night as a time of joy, rather than fear. Folklore tells us of neighbors gathering quietly during the watch, exchanging goods or news, trusting the cover of darkness for conversations they could not have by day. But perhaps the most striking truth is this: the social life of the night was woven into memory. People expected their neighbors to be awake, to share the same rhythm. A cry from one cottage could bring help from another. A bell tolling in the town square was heard by many, because many were not yet deep in second sleep. The midnight watch then was not isolation, it was community breathing together in silence and whispers. Imagine standing in the middle of a village lane. Behind every shuttered window, someone stirs, prays, whispers, or works, alone yet together. Separated by walls yet united by rhythm. This was the social fabric of the medieval night, fragile, hidden, but alive. The healing of the night, medicine for body and soul. For the medieval world, the night was not only a time of rest, it was a kind of medicine. The two halves of sleep, divided by the watch, were believed to heal both body and spirit in ways daylight could not. Physicians wrote that the first sleep was heavy and physical, repairing muscles, calming humors, and strengthening the heart. This was the body's labor, its quiet work of survival. The second sleep, by contrast, was lighter, calmer, a balm for the mind. Dreams in those hours were not dismissed as fantasy, but welcomed as guides, signs, even cures. To wake refreshed at dawn was proof that night had done its work, that the body and soul had been washed clean. But healing did not come only from lying down. The watch itself was restorative. Doctors often advised patients to rise gently after first sleep, to stretch, sip water, even step outside for fresh air. This break, they claimed, aided digestion, steadied the pulse, and prevented melancholy. For many, this short interval gave space for prayer, reflection, or conversation, acts that soothed the heart as much as the body. Imagine a mother sitting by the fire in the still hours, sewing while humming a hymn. Imagine a farmer warming his hands, whispering gratitude for his family's safety. These moments were medicine, quiet rituals that restored calm in a world often harsh and chaotic. Even religion framed the night as healing. Priests taught that midnight prayers purified the soul, making the second sleep holier. Folklore too spoke of night as a cleanser. Witches and demons haunted it, yes, but if one prayed or burned herbs, the darkness itself became protective. Families sometimes kept charms or holy symbols near beds, believing that night carried both danger and remedy. Modern science, centuries later, would confirm what they felt instinctively. Studies show that segmented sleep aligns with circadian rhythms, lowering stress, improving memory, and supporting mental clarity. In a world without artificial light, people lived closer to nature's design, and their sleep, though divided, may have been more restorative than ours. So when a medieval villager woke at dawn, stretching after second sleep, they carried not only the weight of dreams, but the quiet assurance that night had healed them. To them, the night was never wasted time. It was a doctor, a priest, a companion, a medicine woven of darkness, silence, and rhythm. And though our modern world has forgotten, their nights remind us of a truth older than clocks. Healing comes not only from rest, but from the way we share it with time itself. Night and work, labor, chores, and hidden industry. While many treated the midnight watch as a time for prayer, love, or reflection, others turned it into an opportunity for work. In a world where daylight was precious, every hour mattered, and the quiet in between of night often became a hidden workshop. Imagine a peasant family, After first sleep, the father steps outside to check the animals, ensuring no wolf or thief has disturbed them. The mother mends torn clothing by firelight, her needle glinting in the faint glow of embers. Children stir and help, fetching water or husking grain, small tasks done before slipping back into second sleep. These were not burdens. They were simply part of life's rhythm. In towns, the scene grew louder. Bakers were among the busiest souls of the night, rising during the watch to knead dough, stoke ovens, and prepare loaves for the morning market. The smell of bread would drift through cobbled streets long before dawn, guiding early risers to their store. Brewers, too, often used the night to tend vats of ale, checking fermentation when silence allowed focus. Artisans, weavers, smiths, carpenters, sometimes worked in the watch when orders pressed or inspiration struck, their tools clicking and hammering faintly in shuttered rooms. For guards and watchmen, midnight was not an interval but their true labor. They patrolled dark alleys, lanterns swaying, calling out the hours to assure citizens, past 1 o'clock, and all is well. These men were the heartbeat of civic safety, their voices echoing in the silence. In some cities, curfews were enforced. Violators caught in the streets during the watch faced fines or suspicion, for only criminals, travelers, or workers moved freely at such times. Even the church made work of the watch. Monks not only prayed, but also copied manuscripts by candlelight, using the silence for writing too delicate for daytime distraction. Nuns often sewed altar cloths, or prepared medicines in the hushed hours, blending devotion with labor. In wealthy households, servants worked quietly during the watch, cleaning, laying fires or preparing chambers for dawn. Their labor was invisible, yet it shaped the household's rhythm. And then there was the hidden economy, smugglers, thieves, and traders, who used the watch for secret dealings. Court records reveal transactions done between sleeps, stolen goods exchanged, debts paid in whispered meetings, secrets traded in alleys, where shadows offered cover. For them, the watch was not sacred but profitable. Imagine a medieval village or town at this hour. Behind one door a family prays, behind another, lovers whisper. A few houses down, bread is being baked, hammers strike iron, or smugglers exchange coins. The night was not stillness, but a hidden marketplace of life, a second, secret layer of labor that gave the medieval world its rhythm. To us the watch seems like time stolen from sleep. To them it was time reclaimed, proof that even darkness could be turned into work, survival, and creation. Festivals, night vigils, and community rituals. Though much of the medieval night was quiet, there were moments when darkness transformed into celebration. Festivals and vigils, often stretched into the watch, filling hours between sleeps, with song, fire, and prayer. Imagine midsummer, when entire villages gathered outside after first sleep, torches blazing, bonfires leaping against the black sky. Men and women danced in circles, children laughed, drums beat, and the night became alive with joy. In those moments, the boundary between sacred and secular blurred. Songs were prayers, dances were offerings, laughter itself a devotion to life. These were communal rituals, binding neighbors together under starlight. But not all vigils were festive. Many were solemn, sacred nights of prayer. On holy days, churches remained open through darkness, hosting vigils where entire congregations gathered to chant, kneel, and wait for dawn's first light. For the devout, staying awake during the watch was a spiritual act, a way to imitate saints and martyrs, who endured sleepless nights in communion with God. Candles flickered in stone naves, shadows swayed against arches, and hymns echoed until morning. Families, too, sometimes kept vigil at home, praying together for sick relatives, for harvest, for safe journeys. The night also marked life's passages, weddings, births, funerals. These could all be accompanied by vigil. In death, bodies were often watched through the night, candles burning as friends and family prayed beside them until burial. These vigils were both practical, to guard against fire or animals, and spiritual, a way to honor the soul as it crossed into eternity. In birth, midwives often remained awake through the watch, comforting mothers, whispering prayers, guiding new life into the world, while the rest of the household stirred between sleeps. And then there were community rituals tied to fear. During plague years, towns held night processions, people carrying candles, chanting prayers, begging God for mercy. The watch became a time of collective dread, transformed into ritual to soothe the terror of death. Even in smaller fears, droughts, storms, famine, villagers sometimes marched together in the still hours, ringing bells, burning herbs, or calling on saints to guard them. Imagine walking through a medieval town on such a night. The streets are not empty but crowded, faces lit by flame, voices blending in chant or song. The air smells of smoke, of bread from early bakers, of sweat from dancers. Above, the stars look down on a people who turned darkness into unity. Festivals, vigils, and rituals gave meaning to the watch, reminding everyone that the night was not only for fear or secrecy, it was also for joy, prayer, and togetherness. In these moments, the medieval world revealed its greatest truth. Night was not absence, but presence, a time when the community itself kept heartbeat with the rhythm of darkness. The fading of the old night, how modernity changed rituals and sleep. The medieval night with its 2 sleeps and midnight watch seemed eternal, but history turned, and with it, the rhythm of darkness changed forever. The fading of the old night began slowly, almost unnoticed, as small inventions crept into daily life. First came cheaper candles and oil lamps, stretching evenings longer, allowing people to read, sew, and talk well past sunset. Then came markets that stayed open late, cities glowing with lanterns, and taverns alive until dawn. Night began to lose its mystery, becoming another extension of day. By the 17th century, towns across Europe buzzed after dark in ways unthinkable to their ancestors. The Industrial Revolution struck the final blow. Factories demanded rigid schedules, trains ran by clocks, schools and offices set uniform hours. The human body, once free to drift into first sleep and second sleep, was now forced into one unbroken block, pressed between evening work and early rising. Doctors, who once praised segmented sleep, began to call waking at midnight a disorder, labeling it insomnia. Slowly, language itself forgot. Diaries no longer spoke of first sleep or second sleep. Children grew up believing one stretch of 8 hours was the natural design, though for thousands of years it had never been so. The fading of old rituals followed. Midnight vigils in churches grew rare as cities brightened and congregations shrank. Festivals that once filled dark hours with fire and song were replaced with scheduled parades and daylight gatherings. The quiet conversations between families in the watch gave way to evenings dominated by work, reading, or later television and electric light. The communal heartbeat of night dissolved, replaced by private, artificial routine. What once bound neighbors and households together was scattered by the hum of machines and the glow of bulbs. And yet, traces remain. In remote villages, until the 19th century, farmers still spoke of waking after first sleep. Anthropologists, recording oral traditions in Africa and South America, even into the 20th century, found tribes keeping segmented rhythms. And today, insomniacs, who wake at 2 a.m., unknowingly echo their ancestors. Sleep scientists, experimenting with people kept away from artificial light, find their bodies naturally falling into 2 halves of rest. It is as if the old night still lingers within us, hidden, waiting. Imagine standing at the edge of this transition. Behind you, centuries of nights, shaped by darkness, silence, and rhythm. Before you, a world of glowing lamps, ticking clocks, and 24-hour cities. The old night fades, not because it was unnatural, but because progress demanded it. We did not outgrow first and second sleep. We abandoned them, and in doing so, we traded mystery for efficiency, community for productivity, depth for speed. The medieval night, once a world of whispers, prayers, dangers, and dreams, slipped quietly into history, a forgotten rhythm, buried beneath electric light, insomnia, and modern echoes of the old night. In today's world, when someone wakes at 2 or 3 in the morning, they often panic. Doctors call it insomnia. Self-help books warn against it, and people lie awake in bed feeling broken, alone, unnatural. But what if this so-called disorder is nothing more than an echo of the rhythm our ancestors once lived by? For centuries, the human body followed segmented sleep: first sleep, the midnight watch; second sleep. To wake at night was expected, natural, even healthy. The idea that sleep must be 8 unbroken hours is not ancient truth, but modern invention, born from factories, electricity, and alarm clocks. Sleep researchers, who strip away the glow of artificial light, have found that when people return to natural darkness, their bodies rediscover the old pattern. After a few weeks, subjects fall into 2 sleeps. They rest deeply for 4 hours, wake gently for an hour or 2, then slip into a second slumber. During the watch, they feel calm, not restless. They pray, write, think, or simply sit in silence. This is precisely what medieval people describe. The body remembers what the mind has forgotten, yet in our brightly lit age, this natural pause feels alien. Waking at midnight, we glance at glowing clocks, calculate lost hours, and spiral into anxiety. But in another time, this same waking was a gift. The watch was a time to tend to animals, to whisper to loved ones, to speak to God, to dream with eyes open. Today, it is often filled with worry, the hum of appliances, or the blue glare of fur. What we call insomnia may not be sickness at all. It may be our biology fighting against a world of 24-hour light. Imagine this: a person in the 15th century rises at midnight, warms their hands by the fire, prays softly, then returns to bed without fear. Now imagine us, centuries later, doing the same, but with dread, believing we are broken. Yet we are not broken, we are ancient. Our midnight awakenings are ghosts of the old night, reminders that for most of human history, the body flowed with darkness, not against it. Perhaps, if we stopped resisting, we would find peace in the watch once again. So the next time you wake at 2 a.m., do not despair. You are not alone, not unnatural. You are walking in the footsteps of your ancestors, living a rhythm that once guided kings and peasants, monks and lovers, mothers, and children. Insomnia may not be a curse, but a memory, the body whispering, remember who you are, remember the 2 sleeps, remember the what. Dreams, folklore, and the supernatural night. For medieval people, the night was never empty. It was alive with dreams, haunted by spirits, and thick with stories, whispered across generations. Between the first and second sleep, when minds stirred in the quiet hours, dreams carried special weight. These visions were not dismissed as the tricks of the brain, but treated as messages from God, from saints, from ancestors, or sometimes from darker forces. Physicians wrote manuals on dream interpretation, explaining how the heaviness of first sleep produced crude, bodily dreams, but the clarity of second sleep opened the door to spiritual visions. To dream, in the fragile hours before dawn, was to glimpse the true. Folklore layered mystery upon mystery. In villages, people told tales of witches who gathered in secret during the watch, riding the night air, whispering spells that seeped into sleepers' minds. Some believed that demons prowled in silence, slipping into dreams to tempt souls. Others said that ancestors could cross back for a moment, their faces appearing in visions, their voices speaking warnings. In Italy, dream books circulated, promising to decode symbols. A falling tree meant death, clear water meant fortune, fire in a dream meant danger. In England and France, families shared morning stories of what they had seen in second sleep, trading interpretations like news of the day. But dreams were not only superstition, they shaped choices. Merchants delayed journeys after ominous dreams. Farmers sowed fields differently after visions of rain or blight. Even rulers consulted their dreams sometimes changing policies or treaties based on what they saw in the still hours of night. To them, dreams were not private illusions, but public knowledge, a bridge between sleeping bodies and waking worlds. The supernatural made the night heavier still. Midnight was thought to be the hour when the barrier between worlds thick. Spirits of the restless dead were said to wander roads, wolves to take human form, shadows to whisper names, families lit candles or kept charms near beds to ward off the unseen. And yet, there was wonder in these beliefs. Dreams could carry loved ones' voices, lost children's laughter, or visions of paradise. For many, this was comfort, proof that the night connected them, not just to danger, but to love and eternity. Imagine lying on a straw mattress, the fire dim, silence heavy. You stir, after first sleep, whisper a prayer, and close your eyes again, and in second sleep, you see your father, long dead, smiling, speaking words you cannot remember upon waking. To you, this is not coincidence, it is a gift, a reminder that the living and the dead share the night. This was the medieval truth. Dreams, folklore, and the supernatural were not distractions, but the heartbeat of the night itself. To sleep was to step into another world, and to wake was to return with fragments of mystery still clinging to your soul. The science of rediscovery, modern research into segmented sleep. For centuries, the story of first sleep and second sleep was forgotten, dismissed as folklore, until modern science stumbled upon it again. In the 1990s, a researcher named Thomas Vare conducted a simple experiment. He placed volunteers in conditions without artificial light, 12 hours of darkness, night after night, and something remarkable happened. Within a few weeks, their bodies naturally divided sleep into two halves, a deep rest in the early evening, a wakeful watch in the middle of the night, and then a lighter, second sleep, until dawn. They were not restless, they were not anxious, they were calm, peaceful, alert. They prayed, wrote, reflected, or simply sat in stillness. In other words, without clocks or electricity, the body remembered the rhythm of the medieval world. Other studies confirmed it. Anthropologists recorded tribes in Africa, South America, and among rural farmers who still kept segmented nights. Historians, reading old diaries and medical texts, suddenly recognized references to first and second sleep that had once seemed meaningless. Doctors began to wonder if what we call insomnia, waking in the middle of the night, is not a disorder at all, but a natural pattern suppressed by modern life. Even neuroscientists found that the brain, left in darkness, produces hormones differently, releasing melatonin in cycles that fit perfectly with segmented rest. This rediscovery has forced us to rethink our relationship with sleep. For decades, health advice has insisted on one block of 8 hours, treating any waking as failure, but science suggests the opposite, that the midnight watch may reduce stress, improve memory, and support mental clarity. Those who embraced the wakeful hour found themselves calmer, more creative, more in tune with their own thoughts. Some even reported deeper dreams in second sleep, matching exactly what medieval people believed centuries ago. Imagine the irony. What we now call sleep science is in many ways a rediscovery of what peasants, monks, and nobles already practiced. Without question, the body itself has not changed, only the world around it has. Artificial light, industrial schedules, and alarm clocks have compressed us into rigid blocks, but deep inside, our biology still remembers. Think of it this way: when you wake at 2 a.m., restless, staring at the ceiling, you are not broken. You are returning to the oldest human rhythm. You are echoing the nights of your ancestors, who rose to pray, to love, to dream, to simply exist in the sacred pause between sleep. Modern science, with all its machines and experiments, has only confirmed what was once obvious. The night was always meant to be lived in two acts, with a watch in between, and perhaps, in that rediscovery, lies a lesson that progress has not erased the old rhythms, only hidden them, waiting for us to listen again. Lessons for today: what we can learn from the old night. The rediscovery of segmented sleep is not just a historical curiosity, it is a mirror held up to our modern lives, asking us to reconsider what it means to rest. For centuries, our ancestors accepted that the night unfolded in two acts, with a sacred pause in between. Today, we insist on forcing the body into one rigid block, and when it fails, we punish ourselves with worry. But perhaps the lesson of the old night is this: that sleep was never meant to be conquered, it was meant to be lived with. Imagine if we stopped treating midnight awakenings as problems and began treating them as invitation. Instead of tossing in frustration, we might rise gently, light a candle, read, pray, write, or simply sit in silence, and then return to second sleep without fear. Science suggests this could heal us. Those who embrace segmented rest often report less stress, deeper dreams, and greater clarity. Creative minds especially thrive in the watch. Writers, poets, musicians, throughout history, produced their finest work in the still hours of the night. Why should we not do the same? In a world drowning in noise, the midnight watch could become our refuge, a sanctuary of quiet thought and inner renewal.
But the lessons go deeper. The medieval night reminds us of community. Families once shared stories in the watch. Neighbors knew one another's rhythms. Communities prayed and celebrated together in darkness. Today we live in eyeless, each trapped behind screens and schedules. Perhaps reclaiming the old night means reclaiming connection. Using the quiet to speak softly with loved ones, to share silence without distraction, to rebuild intimacy lost in the rush of day. There is also a spiritual lesson. For monks, midnight was a bridge to God. For villagers, it was a time for prayer and gratitude. We may not all share their faith, but the principle remains: to pause, to reflect, to look inward when the world outside is hushed. In those hours, stripped of daylight's demands, the soul finds space to breathe. And finally, the old night teaches us humility. Our ancestors lived with the rhythms of nature, not against them. They rose with darkness, rested with dawn, allowed their bodies to flow with the earth's turning. We, in contrast, have built a world of 24-hour light and endless demand. But our biology has not changed. The old rhythms remain inside us, waiting. So what can we learn? That waking at midnight is not failure, that the watch can be a gift. That night is not only for sleep, but for living differently. And perhaps if we listen, if we slow down, if we let the night teach us again, we may find what our ancestors knew instinctively: that rest is not measured in hours, but in harmony with time itself. The forgotten night and its return. The story of the old night is not only history, it is memory, buried deep in our bones. For thousands of years, people lived in rhythm with darkness. First sleep, the midnight watch; second sleep. In that watch they prayed, whispered, loved, worked, feared, dreamed. The night was layered, alive, a world within a world. And yet in the past few centuries we forgot. Candles gave way to lamps, lamps to electricity, electricity to screens that glow day and night. The old rhythm faded, dismissed as disorder, erased by clocks and factories. But the truth remains: our bodies still remember. When you wake at midnight, restless, staring at the ceiling, you are not broken. You are echoing your ancestors. You are stepping into the forgotten watch, into a rhythm older than modern time. Perhaps this is the lesson the old night offers us today: that waking is not failure, that silence is not emptiness, That darkness is not to be feared, but embraced as medicine, mystery, and memory. Imagine if we reclaimed it. Imagine if, instead of fearing insomnia, we saw it as invitation to sit in quiet, to reflect, to whisper to those we love, to write, to pray, to simply breathe. Imagine if we stopped fighting the body and started listening to it. The old night could return, not in its entirety, but in spirit, as a reminder that life is richer when we live with time, not against it. So when dawn rises and you stretch from second sleep, know that you are part of a story stretching back centuries, to monks chanting in stone cloisters, to farmers tending animals by torchlight, to lovers whispering in the hush, to children dreaming in straw beds. You are not alone. You are part of humanity's oldest rhythm. The forgotten night is not gone. It waits inside us, ready to return whenever we choose to honor it. The medieval world lived with 2 sleeps and a sacred watch. We live with one, yet hunger for more rest, more connection, more peace. Perhaps the key has been with us all along. Perhaps the night has been waiting, patient, timeless, inviting us to remember